this is a typical vented beer faucet. We deal with the standard beer faucets at Coldbreak mostly because they work really well in temporary setups like Jockey boxes. They have a slower pour rate than some of the other ones down below it, so they work better. Again, you want to be conscious of material. If you look here, this is a standard beer faucet. Same with this. This is the same beer faucet, but there's one big difference. If you look at the very top here, this looks like stainless steel because it is, and this one down here looks like brass because it is. This means that the lever here is 100% brass, and it means there's brass down here as well. And so that usually means that this whole faucet is made from brass and then coated in chrome. So make sure you're buying nice stainless steel parts. And if you tear the standard beer faucet apart, you've got the shaft that's inside of it, which connects to your lever. It's connected to your lever by a bonnet here. This bonnet screws down and holds the lever in place. And then this collar up here is on top. This screws onto your lever as well. That way, in case you have a really large tap handle that you need to get straight, what you can do is tighten your tap handle as far down as you can, and then back it off so it's straight looking at you. And then what you can do is you screw this up to the tap handle and hold it in place. So if you're ever to pull a beer faucet apart, which we can do here shortly, the two main pieces are going to be the shaft that sits inside of it and then the lever that connects to the shaft here. There's our other kinds. This is a flow control. You can adjust the flow. So if you're one of the good uses of a flow control faucet is if you were, let's say you had a small draft system and then you tapped a higher carbonated beer, but you didn't have really good control over the amount of PSI to each keg that you're tapping. What you can do is you can reduce you can restrict that flow at the tap, and that will help pour some highly carbonated beers. This is a ventless forward sealing faucet. I've got one here in the studio that I will tear apart as well, so you guys can see the difference between a vented and a ventless or forward sealing faucet. And then this is your nitro faucet. So this is a large wonky faucet that as beer enters it and comes down, there's a plate in here that has 4 tiny holes in it. And what this faucet does is it forces that nitro beer into those really tiny holes and then comes out the spout. And what that does is it helps break out that nitrogen that's suspended in the nitro beer. And so if you ever look at a Guinness that's on the table and it looks like it's falling, that's the nitrogen kind of coming out of suspension, and that's in part due to the plate that's inside of beer that the beer is being forced through. So let's go back to my overhead cam here. And so here you've got a forward sealing and a standard faucet. These are going to be the two most common faucets that you're going to see. This is called vented because there's actually a tiny little hole in here. And so what that does is as your beer faucet closes, it helps the liquid that's inside here, just having that little hole helps it drain a lot faster. So these don't have any holes on them because they operate just slightly different. So once we pull the tap handle off, what you're left with is basically 3 large pieces. So you've got your lever, you've got your bonnet that's holding the lever on, which will pull off, and then your shaft will just drop out. So you'll notice that there's a ball on the back of the shaft with a tiny rubber seal. And so what happens is as you close the tap handle, what it does is it pulls this shaft to the back of the faucet where it seals, so the beer can't get any farther than that. So as you pull forward, that ball actually goes back and allows beer to go around it and through. Right. So the downside to this is if you've ever put one of these on your kegerator at home and you only pour beer out of it once every week or so, these can get relatively sticky, especially if you don't clean them very well, and they can actually stick shut. So these, on the other hand, These pour at a higher velocity, so we don't like using them on Jockey boxes. But also you need enough pressure pushing forward because this acts kind of a little bit separate or a little bit differently because there's actually a ball on the end of the lever here. So once we remove the bonnet that's holding the lever on there, what we're going to see is a ball that's actually on the end of it. And what happens is when you open the tap, the ball moves away from the front. I don't know if you can see. Like inside there's a gasket. And so when you open it, the ball comes away from that gasket and allows beer to go into it. And then when you close the tap, that ball pushes forward on that gasket and it seals itself right there. And so forward sealing faucets have a tendency to work better in kegerators, depending on the pressure that you're using, because that faucet shuts off the beer right here and there's not really room for beer to kind of like get sticky. So as you pull back on the faucet, that ball comes away from it. They work better in the kegerator setup. In every connection, there's going to be, in every metal on metal connection, there's going to be a gasket. Okay, so all faucets have a very tiny gasket on the end of it. So if you're ever getting leaks at your faucet shank, you're probably missing this little rubber gasket. There's that one, and then there's one on this one as well. So in a standard faucet, there's only one gasket. In a forward sealing faucet, if you ignore that one, because that one's kind of permanently installed in that. There's one on the inside, plus there's one at the back of the faucet where the faucet meets the faucet shank. All right, let's get back. Faucets. Oh, I do have a nitro faucet here. Sorry, let me go back. I think it's inside the, yep. Okay, so it's inside the bottom part of the keg here. There's a tiny little, see that little plate in there? Oh, it's got 5 holes. I thought it had 4. So the faucet forces your nitro beer through that little plate, and that's what creates, the creaminess to it. And so nitro faucets pull all the way, when you open it up, when you're going to go pour a nitro beer, you want to pour it all the way down. And then most of them have a creamer ability. And so if you push back, you can push back a little bit on it and it will allow a little bit of beer to come out and it will create like a nice creamy head on it.